Welcome to Writers on Writers, a virtual broadcast of writers talking to, wait for it, other writers. I am your host, writer, Danielle Bannister, and this month's broadcast theme is young adults. And because of that, my guest today is my dear friend, Julie Cassar, writer of all things young adult. Welcome, Julie!
Oh, thank you. Hi, Danielle.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome to be here. And I just want to point out to everyone that I have this one small book, What Moons Do in Young Adult, and you have, I'm going to duck out of the way. Look at all of those young adult titles that you, my dear, have written. So today we are going to be talking about that lovely series. But before we dive into sort of the young adult theme, I wanted to know if you would tell us a little bit about you and your books, and maybe when you knew that you wanted to be a writer.
Sure. Okay, so let's see, a little bit about me. I am by trade a marketing coordinator for a law firm. My background is in graphic design and art, and I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts. Never wanted to be a writer initially, but writing came easy to me, like in school and stuff, but never really had any dreams of being a writer. Wanted to be the art person and all that. Then, life, as it does, take twists and turns, and I ended up, I worked in the art field for 5 or 6 years, and then I ended up working in the legal field, doing a legal assistant job part-time while I was having kids and raising them and everything else. So now they're all grown-ups. I mean, 2 college kids and 1 junior in high school. And I got a promotion at the law firm that I currently work at, and they promoted me to the marketing coordinator. They kind of actually, it was kind of fun because they's like, well, we stalked you a little and we see that you're a writer and you have this background. And so that was like really thrilling and exciting for me. So so I got back into sort of the marketing, writing end of things, art end of things, and I really love it. Like, it's my wheelhouse, I thrive in it. So I started writing, my first book was Ruby Blue. And well, actually, that's not true. My first book, my first book was a memoir, sort of, about life lessons, kind of my own, what I learned and how everything came full circle when I was, in my 30s.
I did not know this about you.
Yeah, see, you learn something new every day. I wrote it on a dare from my best friend, who was my college roommate, Beth. And she was sort of like, I dare you to write a book about us and all our crazy times and this, that, and the other. I was like, fine, I will. Fine then. Don't tell me I can't do nothing. So I just started writing, and it was like crazy because once I started, I was like a mad machine. Like, I think I wrote almost every night for 5 nights, and I finished technically a novel in 5 days. And I had carpal tunnel. But, so it was a rough trip. And then what happened was something very personal in my life occurred, and I wrote the ending of the book. It was like, I feel like there was something out there that told me, get all these words out, you're going to need them. And I went through this whole process of sort of like my family and these lessons I learned in my college and sort of my own coming of age story. And then this blast from my past came back into the picture. And I was like, I wrote like basically the last chapter to the book. And I was like, whoa, it was like a total full circle. Like, I needed all those words out in order to process and deal with what happened. I never published that book. I did post excerpts on my blog. Yeah, I did post excerpts on my blog, and I actually gave a copy of it. I printed them and like bound them at Kinko's or whatever. And I gave a copy of it to all of my family members, like my brothers and sisters, because they were all in it. And they were shocked. I remember I gave it to them for Christmas, and they all just like, their mouths dropped like, what? You wrote a book? What are you talking about? Like, how did we not know this? And so I never printed it. I actually tried to. I sent it out to 32 queries and I got 32 rejections. So it was disheartening, although I did get a few notes on some of them, like a handwritten note from the agent back or whatever, which was nice. But that really was like, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah. During this process, I started a blog because my one brother was my whole family was super supportive, but my one brother was really supportive. And he said, you should start a blog and get followers and stuff. So I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I just kind of said, okay, I created my own website. I started a blog. I posted excerpts. I just started sharing it places and tried to email it to people. And eventually I kind of grew my reader base, I think, because people really enjoyed my blogs, which, as you know, I blog about bullshit.
Yeah, you blog about things that happen in life and
it's sort
life
of like
observations.
This episode of Julie's life, like that's what I blog about. It's like a Seinfeld episode, kind of. It's like it's not about writing typically. I mean, sometimes it is if I'm dealing with whatever, but so I think I gained a following that way. People just got to know me and sort of my life, whatever mission, whatever, like my view of things. So my brother said, so I had this idea for Ruby Blue, just the story, for a really long time, since about 2005 or 6. It was around the time when my son was born. He was born in
what is for, I mean, there's probably some people who don't know the Ruby Blue sort of series, or what is that, what the general sort of gist behind that? We know it's young adult, but what is it roughly about?
So it's about a 17-year-old girl who lives in northern Michigan, Lake City, which is an actual place. All my locations are like real and actual places that I've been to and maybe have a little bit of meaning to me. And it's about this girl who can see fairies. And it's sort of like this secret she keeps. She realizes when she's very small that she has this ability to see fairies outside in the garden, rural area. And she sort of just takes it like face value, like, wow, okay, I got this special thing. Nobody else can see these people, but I can. So whatever, it's cool. But then as she gets older, it's basically a mystery unfolds in their town. Strange things start happening. And she realizes the sort of fairy world and everything involved, the sort of myths and all the legends you hear about are sort of way bigger than she ever imagined. When you're a teenager, you tend to, it's all about you and your little circle of peers, and you kind of don't realize there's a whole bigger world going on around you or other factors at play. And so she kind of learns through this book, like there's a lot more things happening and going on, and sort of more creatures kind of get introduced, and it's sort of like a sweet romance and a mystery, and it's very much like an episode of Scooby-Doo. So
that's an interesting way to describe that series. Now, I think it's important before we get a little too far in this, it's important to note that you and I are actually very close friends.
Yes, we are.
We talk every day.
Every single day.
All day long. It's not we're in touch a lot. Yes. You live in Michigan. I live in Maine.
Right here. You live way over
there. Do you remember when we first met?
Okay, so I think this is my recollection.
Go ahead. It's probably better than mine.
A mutual colleague and friend of ours, better friend to you actually, Amy Miles, introduced us via Facebook. Yep. And I feel like I can't remember the reason.
I do know. Okay. If this was when we first met, then I do know the reason behind it. You went to a signing with her.
Yes.
That a reader had put together, and reader had basically said, I want to gather all of my favorite authors. And she sort of gathered.
In Nashville.
Yeah.
In
and
Nashville.
So she gathered that, and you were there, and Amy thought for some reason that you and I would hit it off really well. And she introduced
she was
us.
Right.
She was right.
Yay, Amy!
So Amy Miles is responsible for our friendship.
Yes, for our crazy friendship. And then we should also add, we only usually get to see each other once a year.
Yep.
For about 4 days. Yep. At a book con that we both attend in the middle, sort of. Well, not the middle at all for you.
It's not the middle for me at all.
but we were super sad because this year it didn't happen. This dumb pandemic.
Yeah.
So we talk every day, like
I
all day
remember
long.
the literal first time meeting you at Penn's, like in person.
Mm-hmm.
I had just arrived and you were down in the lobby and I was coming down from my room to meet you. And
Yeah.
I pushed the elevator button doors to go down, and the
Uh-huh.
elevator door came open and you steamrolled me into a huge bear hug. And I'm like, who is this crashing into me? And then I was, oh, it's you.
I was sitting in the lobby, like anxiously waiting, like watching. It was like literally another episode of Scooby-Doo or Seinfeld or something. The door opens and I see you there, and I just,
Yep.
ran up to
Yep.
you. Yeah, I'm a hugger, people. I'm a
Good
hugger.
thing you knew it was me. If it had been somebody who looked like me, that poor
Right.
person.
Right. And that's funny. It's funny.
Now, young adult, the theme today is, of course, young adult, but that's, of course, not the only genre that you write. We'll talk about your other series in a bit. But I'm curious, what made you want to write young adult?
Okay, so it wasn't even like something I actually consciously thought of. So what I was saying was I had this idea for this book years ago, and I never wrote it because I kind of always thought, so I was a big gardener when I was married and had little kids. I would work outside a lot because it was sort of my escape, just quiet time, downtime, or when the kids were napping or they wanted to play outside, it gave me something to do. So I thought of this story about this, this girl who loved gardens and loved the flowers. And what if you could see little fairies and creatures? And I just kept like envisioning like the names, the sort of what they looked like. But I didn't know the whole story, but I always thought it would be a children's book, like, for small children.
Right.
And so when my brother said, you should try your hand at fiction, he's like, you should really try your hand at fiction. I said, well, I had this idea for a while. He goes, you should just try it. I was like, okay. So I started to write it, and I love reading young adult myself. And we should clarify to people who don't know.
Yes, please.
Young adult is not the audience of the book per se. Young adult is the age of the main characters of the book. Correct. So they're not necessarily just for children or young adults. They're for all ages.
Not at all. I love young adult books.
Harry Potter.
Absolutely.
Young adult.
Yeah. It just
more
means that the main character is a young adult. That's it. That's all it means.
Yeah. Exactly. So, but I love reading that genre. I was a huge Harry Potter fan. I was a huge Twilight fan. Right. Mary Janice Davidson, that's not necessarily young adult, but her style of writing, at least in some of her earlier books, is very young adult-ish, if that makes sense.
Yep.
It's not, so anyways, I just basically wrote the kind of book I like to read. So when I started Ruby Stories, I really just tried to channel my inner 17-year-old self and kind of that's how it came out.
Well, and I'm so glad that you did channel that young adult sort of brain, because your brain is the person who I went to when I was writing my very first young adult. Which is
fantastic, by the way. Everybody can read it.
She has to say that.
I don't.
It's totally blind. But I asked you to kindly read one of like the I think it was an art version of it, to let me know if there was anything that needed tweaking, that didn't quite feel right, if it sounded too mature. And you were able to pinpoint like a few words and a few phrases and a few things that were like, this is your 45-year-old brain talking, not your high school brain. I'm like, oh, right. So you were very good at helping me point that out. Do you think that there's something that young adult writers maybe need to pay attention to when they're writing that kind of stuff? Is there something that is really important to stress?
I think so. I think it's really important. Sometimes people write young adult characters way too mature in my mind. I've read some books that I thought, oh, it's a great book, but these are not 17, 18, 16-year-olds. These sound like 25-year-olds.
Their problems are too complex, or
their thinking process is too complex and too, does that make sense?
Like, yeah, it does.
Teens tend to, like I said, teens tend to be very tunnel vision and me. yes, there are older souls and there are more kind,
Sure.
giving people and whatever, but a lot of teens are selfish. A lot of teens are self-centered, even the nice, great, sweet ones.
And
It
even the
is-
smart ones can be really stupid.
Yeah, it's human nature, and there's a growth process, right? I think, and that's what's important, especially if you're writing young adult. You want to show, as with any book, you know, you want to show character growth, but you want to show maturity growth, I think, in a young adult. And I think if you start out way up here, I don't think you're being real to your characters, because, you know, no 16-year-old I know is gonna think a certain way or say certain things. They just, I mean, maybe that weird one, quirky, odd one, but then they're going to have lots of other weird issues. And it's like, you can't have this perfect, you know, complicated character and sell it as a 17-year-old, in my opinion, typically, you know? So I think that's really important, is to sort of think that way.
Well, I'm glad that you helped me with that, because that was definitely something. Trying to capture a young adult voice was very important. That's my alarm to let us know that we need to record soon.
Because we moved up our time, so
yeah, so
you know,
there's live still looking for it. So let me ask you this: now that you've taken a large gulp of wine, you can answer
a tiny
very
sip. I took a
hard
tiny sip.
question.
Tiny sip. I took a tiny sip.
No, what is your writing process like? Do you tend to follow the same path? Are you all over the map? Like what is your, do you have a process?
Yeah, so my process is completely opposite of yours. This chick is a machine, by the way. Like, she is like, by the book, like Miss Perfect novelist writer. I am the slapdash, haphazard, fly by the seat of my pants writer. I think it was you who I posted a video and then you shared it or posted one too. I posted a video of myself writing one of my scenes. So I typically almost always have to write to music. Sometimes I put music, sometimes I put music on repeat over and over and over if I'm writing a certain scene or chapter and I just the same song like 10 times in a row. I typically don't outline very much. I do have a little outline process where, so for me, I usually start, if inspiration hits, I start writing that initial whatever came to me. I just write without boundaries, right? I just kind of put it down. Sometimes it's a chapter, sometimes it's 5 pages, whatever. I mean, I just sort of write it out. Then I stop and I kind of think, okay, what is the story really going to be about? Where's it going to go? And I sometimes will outline just, I might even have some, hang on, just wait. This is like total.
We're gonna see a rare glimpse behind the writer curtain.
Okay, so yeah, so this is what sometimes my outlines look like. About halfway through the book or a third of the way through the book, I want to start jotting down ideas or notes of what I want to hit, and it scribbles. Okay, so this was from my other series. Okay, so can you see that? See how scribbly that is? Now this is not really an outline. There's literally like little sections of like, oh, you know, this has to happen, you know, that has to happen. And I kind of put it
all on wrinkled paper too.
Yeah. Well, this is like a notebook that, you know, is kind of just tossed around, keep it by the side of my bed, whatever. But so I tend to outline something like that somewhere in the book, but not something formal, and not, they're always like chicken scratches that I can barely read myself. The other day, I was talking to my friend Beth online. We were talking through the next scene that I have to write in my book because I was sort of stuck and I didn't really know where to go. So we always sort of bounce ideas. She just helps me like start to think. And I was typing notes while we were talking, and we were also having cocktails. So I went back to my notes to read them later. And I was like, the heck did I write? Like, I was like, I don't understand half of this. So she's like, okay, send it to me and we'll go over it again. So we did, and we were laughing so hard. So then I'm like clarifying, typing much cleaner, no drinks this time. So, you know, yeah, so I do outline a little bit, but basically I just sit and write, you know, from that point on, I just try to put my butt in the chair and write. And you know how difficult it is for me. Sometimes I write, I'll lock myself, like if I'm want to get something done, or I'm like near the end and I know I've got like maybe 10,000, 8,000 words left. Sometimes I literally like lock myself in my house, don't see anyone, don't get on Facebook. Like, I mean, I'll talk to you. Obviously. like, I
And
just
you'll
sort of,
moan about, I still have to edit.
but I sort of like will lock myself away just to sort of pound out the ending or whatever. But it usually takes me a good, 10 months to a year plus to finish a book.
Yeah.
So
It's-
I don't have a schedule because I work full time and I have kids.
Right.
And,
You gotta fit it in where you fit
yeah,
it in.
and sometimes I'm just not motivated to do it. Right? I'm just like, meh, I don't want to. I don't want to. I don't feel like it.
Life gets in the way. And I think sometimes that readers might kind of forget that how long it takes for a book to actually come from beginning to end to hitting publish. It's a long process to do
it can
that.
sometimes take a couple years even. And the thing is too, is we don't always know where our story's going necessarily. Like I knew when I wrote Ruby, when I finished it, when I was writing this book, there are 4 courts in the royal world of Fae, and they all revolve around the elements. So earth, air, fire, and water.
Right.
So I knew, there's going to be 4 books because I'm going to basically theme one around each of the courts. So the W.O.W was the water court, water on the screen. So it had W.O.W like, hey, we're back there again. So I got to pull in like water creatures and all kinds of water, urban legends and mythology. So I started writing the second book before the first book was even done editing. So I was lucky in that when I released Ruby Blue, I was able to release W.O.W 6 months later because I was sort of working on them in tandem. Like I've been like, I got to work on these edits and then I've got to be writing W.O.W, so I was but I also only worked part-time and I never slept. So there's that.
Something we should point out, I count 5 books, by the way, not 4. You going to explain yourself there?
Yes. So when the series finished, it got like a lot of great reviews, which I was super happy about. But my readers and fans were really kind of disappointed in me. And they were like, the story can't be over. You can't end it. We need more. We need more. And one of the main characters in the book his name is Brennan. He is a fairy prince, of course. And everybody fell in love with him, as did I, because he was my super book crush boyfriend. So it was wonderful to write him. So what I did was I really wrote Forever Kansas for the fans. I never intended to write it, but I took the end of W.O.W from that point forward and flipped the perspectives and told it from Brennan's point of view. So all the books, the first 4 books are told in Ruby's perspective from her point of view. But, of course, Brennan goes off and isn't there all the time and isn't around and doing other things. I never thought I would know where he was. But when I flipped it around and kind of got to be in his head, that was a really cool process. It was super fun. And I know your next project is going to be something like that.
Yes.
Although
yes.
I got to be a boy. I got to be a dude. And it was cool to do that because and how I kept you in check with that book, my brother kept me in check for this one. He's like, no, a guy wouldn't say it that way.
Yeah, you definitely, if you write a guy's point of view, you have to get like a couple of guys to read it and go, how close am I? What do I need to check?
Right, my brother was imperative. So your next book, tell us about that.
Well, I've decided to take What Moons Do and sort of, while I was writing that, there's the best friend character, Trista, who kept whispering sort of in my ear throughout writing it. And I'm like, shh, this is Heather's story. Shh, quiet. But she was really whispering pretty loudly. So I'm giving her point of view a shot.
And her story, right?
That'll be fun. Her story, cool. The same basic timeline of events, but from her point of view. We'll see if it pans out. I don't know yet. This is it's a test. It may end up being, just a short story. It might not end up being anything.
See where it goes. I never know where stuff's gonna go.
Exactly. See, even though I have outlined it.
Good for you. I didn't. Well, that was the cool thing about doing Forever Kansas. And just so you know, the book does not take place in Kansas. Kansas is the nickname that Brennan gives Ruby. So that it ties it all together. He gives it to her in book 1. And so it's kind of, in a sense, you know, the last book was called Forever Blue. This one was Forever Kansas. So it still takes place in Michigan. Well, and in Faye, that's the land of the fairies. And yeah, so that's that.
And one other thing that I wanted to point out about your series, I'm going to bow down my head so everyone can see. You designed and created all these covers yourself, right? Because you are the artist, as you are.
I did. I feel like they need a redesign soon, at least a little bit, but I'm really exceptionally proud of the last cover, which most people don't know, but Forever Kansas is actually, because it kind of goes back to the beginning and retells the story, like in Princess Bride, you know, let me go back to the beginning. So it is actually book 1's cover, but I just manipulated it with Photoshop and stuff and kind of put some cool effects on there. But I sort of just twisted it to, it's literally the cover I used from book 1, the same image.
Is it, are they paintings or are they photos?
No, so they are all photographs that I took in northern Michigan. They're all up north. So,
nice.
Yeah.
They look very artsy, like paintings would too. So
yeah, I want them to have a little artsy effect. Right. They do actually. I mean, they're, like I said, I feel like they need a redesign of some kind, but they do attract attention when I go to book shows, especially if I have them like on large posters, the colors and stuff.
That's all that matters.
They don't even know what it is about, but they're like, ooh, that looks good.
Pretty. It's like looking at foliage. Pretty.
Right.
Okay, so tell me this. What are your favorite parts about writing and what are your least favorite parts about writing?
My favorite parts about writing are usually the very first few chapters or whatever that I start to write, the beginning of the book, because that's usually when I'm super excited and I've got this inspiration and I have to get out the words, and I'm creating character. For me, characters are very, very important. I think they drive the plot. So I like to make my characters very real, and I get to think about their nuances and their hair and their likes and their dislikes and maybe a little quirk they have, and the story, this basic idea, whatever I have in my head, this theme, this vision comes to life as I start to put these characters in there, you know what I mean? And so that's probably one of my most favorite parts. And when I get on a writing spree that some crazy things happen, like when you don't see it coming yourself, and it's just something so awesome, like that happened in my last series. I mean, I feel like I've experienced this in all of my books in some way, but especially with the last book I wrote, and I was just like, whoa, this is
like
awesome.
An out-of-body experience almost, where like suddenly like you're not in charge of the story anymore.
Yes. You're like, whoa.
Yeah, okay, go. Yeah.
Yeah. And my least favorite part, you know what it is. It's your least favorite part too, I bet. Editing hell.
Hate it. Why can't it come out right the first time?
Yeah, Danielle knows that when I edit, I tend to have to, I put a time limit or something, and I'll say, I can't have a glass of wine, or I can't have a whatever until I do 10 pages. I can't talk to you again until I at least get through 10 pages. And sometimes I'll be like, oh, like just I don't know why is it so torturous. It's awful.
It's hard. It's hard. It's hard looking at crap that you've written and trying to make it better.
Yeah. And then it's like bad, like when I get my edits from my editor, she literally hand writes them like with red pen. It's just, sometimes it's so brutal. And it's not that they're necessarily bad or anything. It's just, it's
time consuming.
By that point,
very time consuming.
So sick of our story. Like we just want it to be pretty and nice and perfect. Yeah. And we are so sick of it at that point. We're already like thinking,
shoving it out the door.
Yeah.
Yep. You are an adult now. Go do your thing. Now, speaking of adult, we'll merge from young adults. Nice little segue there. Merge from young adult to new adult, because you have written a new adult trilogy. Now, if those people don't know what new adult means, how would you describe that genre?
Again, just like the young adult, New adult is basically people who are newly adults. They're younger, older people, if that makes sense.
College
I'm going to
ages
say
usually.
20, 30,
Yeah.
20s, 30s
Yeah.
is the age of the range of the characters. Yeah.
Yep. And so you wrote, the covers obviously aren't here because this is the young adult broadcast, but what would you, what was your series? Do you have a series name, titles, gist that you'd like to plug?
Sure, it's the Stealing Light trilogy. The first book is Stealing Light, the third book is Chasing Darkness, and the third book is called Revealing Hope, and that one released about a year ago. So.
And so your first series was about fairies. Do you want to tell us at all about what this series is about, or would you rather
just
keep
a
that
little
under
bit.
wraps?
It's the main character, again, another woman. I kind of tend to be drawn towards female protagonists, but again, this story is slightly different in that I have a couple of main lead characters who are angels. And it's about a woman who can see angels, and it kind of occurred after a tragedy in her life, which I do go through. It's a very big part of book one because it's sort of her realization of what's going on. And it's sort of the, good versus evil, a fight. And what she uses, so she has this power in addition to being able to see angels, what her main power was that she knew she had was she gets visions of the future. She gets little splashes, so when she's near somebody or touches them, she gets sort of a glimpse of something that could potentially help them or hurt them. And during this time of her learning all this stuff, she realizes she has a guardian angel and that she can see him. She can't see them all. She can only see certain things. Usually you can only see, in my series, you can only see an angel if they show themselves to you, kind of a thing, but she can see hers and she can see a couple others. She's special, and her gifts and her specialness become much more involved and sort of revealed throughout the books. And the second book, I did the whole switch point of view where I told from her point of view and then one of her guardian angel's point of view, not her guardian, but somebody else's angel, different guardian angel. So that was, again, fun because I got to be female, male, and it was like consecutive chapters. So it was interesting to do that timeline of things too. And the third book, I just threw it all out the window and I totally did like flashbacks and flash forwards and all kinds of, I still did the alternating chapters, but then I threw in another one. Let's tell it from third person. I'm sure I broke all kinds of writing rules, but everyone tells me it's like their most favorite book they've ever read. So at least by me.
There you go. There you go. So from fairy wings to angel wings.
Exactly. And that's a fantastic tagline, Miss Danielle. Thank you for helping me with that. She's so fantastic.
Now you wrote in sort of two. Yes, they both have wings involved, but they're definitely different genres. Young adult and new adult genres are very different genres. They attract different type of readers. Were you worried at all about genre hopping? Because I know I write in a lot of genres, and I'm always sort of worried that maybe readers won't find me where I go. Did you have any concerns at all about genre hopping?
No, not at all, actually. I just write the stories I want to write. And this ended up being sort of paranormal, suspense, romance. There was way more romance in it than I intended. It's definitely a darker series than Ruby. Ruby's very light and whimsical and it's darker, but there is still some levity to it. But it deals with a little darker themes in there. But I wasn't worried at all because I also feel like I like young adult and new adult. I think a lot of people who don't just read one genre. I mean, I guess there's those few who only read horror or who only read, but I think a lot of people, if you're a reader, you tend to at least branch out a little. And I think young adult and new adult are close anyways. And I have a lot of adult readers. So I think if they like one of your books, I think they're going to look forward to reading your style or your tone and seeing where you can go next,
Yeah, I think
so I didn't worry at all about it. It didn't even cross my mind.
Yeah. Well, that's probably good. Could you, we're sort of getting close to the end here. Would you mind humoring us and maybe reading a few lines of one of your books or the back of a blurb, some sort of something, just so we can talk about that voice that we were talking about?
Okay.
Love for people to hear your voice.
And when she says a voice, she doesn't mean my actual speaking voice.
Correct.
She means like the voice of the characters, the
Yeah,
tone.
every author
Yeah.
has sort of a voice and a tone. You can
Mhm.
usually figure out, oh yeah, that's that writing sort of voice. So I'd love to hear yours.
Right. Okay, so let me put my reading glasses on. Okay, so let me just set this up. This is, again, it takes, so I'm gonna read like, I don't know, like a page and a half or something.
Which book is this?
This takes place, this is Ruby Blue.
Thank you.
It's about in the middle of the bookish, and I should tell you, she has like she has a little love interest, you know, her first boyfriend kind of thing that's going on, and she has a best friend, and her best friend's name is Jeremy. And Jeremy is a gay character in the book. And again, I wrote this back in 2011. I didn't do it with an intention of like making any sort of statement. It just, that's who Jeremy was. Like, that's how he came out, like instantly, like I knew his character. I didn't do it with intention, I guess, but it ended up being such a fantastic character and counterpoint to everything going on. So anyway, Ruby hates fish. That's just one of her little things. She hates fish. And her dad's fishes, and they live up north, so of course they're going to fish all the time. And so she's getting ready to go out and meet her friend Jeremy late at night. It's summer. So this is all told from her perspective. So that's the setup. You missed a good catch, Rubes, Dad said. Doubtful. Your mother really outdid herself this time. There aren't even any leftovers. Oh, darn. I smiled and shrugged at my dad as I swallowed a huge bite of my sandwich. I finished my sandwich and sat in silence with my parents as we watched some boring show about meerkats or something. I glanced at the clock and noticed it was almost 9, so I got up and went to get a beach towel. I'm going to meet Jeremy to swim, I said as I walked by them. They didn't need to know that I wasn't wearing any clothes under my bathing suit. Or I should say that's wrong. I wasn't wearing my bathing suit under my clothes. See, that's what we get when we do this on the fly. We skip words. Midnight, my mother reminded me. Back to the book. I know, Ma, I answered as I pulled the door shut behind me and walked out the backyard. I slowly walked through the woods, down the path to the lake, and felt eerily alone again. I couldn't even hear my own footsteps because I wasn't wearing any shoes. The path through the woods was so well worn, it was all dirt, and I knew just where to step. It was too quiet, though. There wasn't the usual sounds of katydids and frogs echoing off the trees. And even weirder, I didn't see a single fairy along the way. I came up to the deserted lifeguard tower, sat down on the driftwood log, and waited for Jeremy. It was so dark out that I could barely see my hand in front of my face. I could hear the sounds of a few other people scattered along the beach, probably doing the same thing Jeremy and I were going to do, but I couldn't really see them. The only light was from the moon reflecting off the water. I was starting to feel a little jittery. I always got a little jumpy before going skinny dipping. There was something exciting and forbidden about it. Not that Jeremy or I would do anything illegal or anything. Well, maybe skinny dipping in the lake is illegal. How do I know? I've never gotten a ticket for it, and I've sure never seen the sheriff rounding up naked swimmers in handcuffs. I started giggling at the thought of a bunch of naked handcuffed tourists being paraded down the beach. As I was contemplating the legality of our soon-to-be nighttime activity, I heard Jeremy shuffling through the sand towards me. There you go. So I
You almost broached the new adult genre there.
But so this is the thing in this book that I think people enjoyed about it was just a little passage of sort of in Ruby's mind, like her little sort of thoughts. But with my paper towel bookmarks, she swears a little bit, but what I tell, or there's like a little swearing in this book, but what I tell people is it's PG-13. Yeah. So that's what kind of makes it for younger people. I sort of say
teenagers swear. I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry to let people know that they swear.
But because I sort of wanted to keep it a little cleaner, and in these books anyway, at least it's sort of a fade to black. Whenever I do describe some intimate scenes. There's kissing and this and that, But then if it gets a little too, I sort of like leave it to the reader's imagination, which I think parents appreciate because I've had
that's
so
appropriate for young adult. That's appropriate.
Yeah, I have so many parents and grandparents who say, I love this book. This is one of the only books I can read and then let my daughter read or my son read. And I will say my son has read all of these books. Oh. Yeah. So, there's guy stuff in there and there's,
yeah.
Creatures. I don't want to say what, but there's creatures of all kinds. So I think, these books, I sort of reveal some, but I definitely do the fade to black, but I've had people tell me, thank God you did that, because now, I can share this with my kid and we can both enjoy it and find stuff in there that we like.
If you want to leave the lights on, then you go to new adult, you go to contemporary, and
exactly,
you read it there.
Yeah, exactly, which is what I did in the next series.
Exactly. Now, if somebody listened to that passage and said to themselves, I need to get that book, where can they find your series? Where can they find out more about you?
Right, and that probably wasn't the best passage to read because nothing really happens in that passage, but so I am on Facebook, Julie Cassar. I don't have an author page, it's just, that's my general page. I'm on Amazon everywhere. I have an author page on Amazon. I have my stuff at Barnes & Noble, Nook, if you have Nooks. I don't even know if anybody uses those anymore. iBooks, I'm on Apple, but not all of my titles are on Apple yet. I feel like I don't have everything on iBooks. Probably the biggest range is Amazon, the conglomerate.
Well, that's really all that people need to know. They can just Google you and find you. You're on all the platforms. As you website. Should be. That's right.
I have a website, and that's available. Like, you can link that to that through anything. It's all there. So yeah.
So you're easily searchable, is what you're saying to me.
Yes.
Find you down. Well, that does it for us. Tune in next month when our theme will be romantic comedy, rom-com novels with MC Kearney. This has been Dan. What?
With Mecca?
Yeah.
Oh, Mecca! Yeah. I haven't seen Mecca in forever either.
I know. Yeah, she's gonna do rom-com with us, so that'll be great. So we will sign off and hopefully see you next month. Bye.
All right, thanks.